So I am 37 years old. I turned 37 years old on July the 5th of this year. And literally, it's a celebration of me turning 37 years old, but it's also a celebration of my life. It's been 30 years of me having a brain tumor. And I'm still here, and I never expected that, to be honest. I never really thought that I would be here. Once they told me I had the brain tumor, I thought that, maybe I'd have some good years, but, I may not be here. So, and then that was actually brought to fruition a couple of years ago. But let me take you back to when I was 7 years old. So I was diagnosed with a brain tumor back when I was 7 because I had a seizure at my elementary school. And I had a seizure, and basically you go unconscious during seizures, and because there's so much pressure on the brain. So when I went unconscious during my seizure, that's when the gym teacher took me into the office, and the principal actually looked at me and she said, look, I came back to normal at that point, but she said that you didn't see him 20 minutes ago outside. I was outside and I literally had fell out because I had the seizure. But, once that fluid gets flowing again, you're able to, get it going, get everything back to normal. So she told my parents, she said, take him to Children's Hospital. Do not take him back to the DMC regular doctor's office. It's something going on that's more. And that was the best advice she could have given, because they did a more thorough check that way, because I went to the hospital and they did a CAT scan. And when they did the CAT scan, they actually saw something on my brain, but they didn't know what it was. So that prompted them to do an MRI. Once they did the MRI, they said that, oh, wow, there is a large mass on his brain. So that's when they found the brain tumor on my brain. And literally, you can imagine what we thought at that time, wow, there's a tumor on my brain. But we didn't even have time to think of that, to be honest, because that night, after they got the results from the MRI, that's when they actually found the tumor. They ran in my room and they said, we got to do emergency surgery. I didn't have any time to prepare or anything like that, but they said we got to drain the fluid down before anything happened. So they put a tube in my head. I had that tube in my head for 3 months. 3 months down from my head down to my stomach, and it was just draining fluid because I had been building up fluid over time. My body had been building up fluid because the fluid had nowhere to go. And that was the first part of me dealing with this brain tumor. And literally after that time, I went through 30 years of things. I'm 37 now. I'm 37. I was 7 years old when I was diagnosed. And literally, during that time, when I was diagnosed, I had about a good 2 years in there where the tumor didn't do anything. And then the tumor started doing something. It started growing. It started growing fast. And I didn't really realize that you can feed the tumor by what you eat. But that's a story for another day. I went ahead and actually went to the doctor. I got the MRIs and they said, we got to do something fast. So they talked to my parents and they said, well, maybe we can do the gamma knife treatment. And the gamma knife treatment, it's a radiotherapy treatment, and it delivers radiation to the brain, but it doesn't pinpoint the tumor. I don't know if it does it now, but it blasts the brain with radiation. And at that time, we knew in the future that could cause problems. That can cause serious problems. So that's when we're like, no, we can't do that. So we looked at other options. My dad did some research and he found the radiation seed implants. So radiation seed implants actually let out radiation in the brain over time. And they let it out at the site where it needs to go. And so it would be less destructive to my brain. So we said that would probably be a better option to do. So we did that, and it bought me probably about a couple months, but then the back part of the tumor wasn't getting any radiation. So literally, you can imagine what we thought, wow, we did all that and now the back part isn't getting radiation. So They said now we can do the gamma knife treatment and actually blast that just a little back part with the radiation. So it won't be as much because we already shrunk most of the tumor. So so we allowed them to do that. So I did that. That bought me some more time, but then we got to the thing where my eyes went cross. My eyes went cross, and we didn't know what to do. So basically, they said that the tumor was now pressing on my optic nerves. So when the tumor was pressing on my optic nerves, that's when we saw, okay, we got to do something. We got to do something fast. So when the tumor was pressing on my optic nerves, that's when they said, okay, maybe you can see an optometrist. So I went to Kresge Eye Institute in Detroit, and they said, well, maybe we can rearrange his eye nerves. So they had researched it, and they decided that they could rearrange my eye nerves to actually get me back to normal. So they rearranged my eye nerves, but they scheduled a surgery for that. Literally, the worst surgery of my life, literally. And when I had that surgery, they actually went in, they went in my eyes. They rearranged my eyes up here and up here, and I woke up and my eyes were bleeding. My eyes were bleeding. And literally, I was a mess. For 2 days, I couldn't see. My eyes were bleeding. But after I could see, it was a little bit better. And every day it got a little bit better. And, and eventually it got great. So, and I can see now my eyes aren't crossed. But sometimes I do have a lazy eye, but it happens. Now, during that time, I actually, it was pressing on my optic nerves. My vision got worse and that kind of thing. But my eyes weren't crossed. So that's what I could get glasses. So I got glasses at that time. And then that bought me a little bit more time. And the tumor had got back stable for a minute. But then I didn't realize that a cyst was in my brain. Is in my brain. And everything I was eating, it was contributing to that cyst. And basically putting all that fluid in. And that cyst was getting bigger and bigger and bigger slowly over time. And so it eventually got to a point to where it obstructed my acoustic nerve. And when it obstructed my acoustic nerve, that's when I couldn't hear anymore. And let me just say, my hearing got severely depressed. Well, it went severely down. And with that, when it going severely down, I could barely hear anything. But, I said, you know what, this is part of the tumor journey, so I'm okay with it. But I will say that I went to the doctor, and they actually said that, hey, it's not the tumor, it's a cyst. But the thing is that shrinking that cyst was it was a 50% chance of me dying. But I lived on the surgery. I had to think about it for a couple of days, and I'm like, look, I've already made it through a lot of stuff. And when you have that kind of courage and that kind of wisdom, and you've survived that many operations already, life is that precious to you, but you're not scared of anything because you can make it through. And so that was the last operation I had, but it's been operations in that, a shunt revision, and it's not even telling a half of it. Now, there's a lot of natural things that I do within that, but literally, that's my story. Literally, it's been 30 years of operations, 30 years, and I'm still here. So I always try to spread positivity and love and light and wisdom on the world, because literally, it's my thanks to the world, for being here. I could have been gone, but I'm still here.